Welcome to our audience with NEC. This conversation is part of a Hiley report on small cell backhaul that gives an update on the small cell backhaul solutions available today and on the evolution of the mobile operators' requirements for small cell backhaul. My name is Hiley. I'm here today on behalf of Hiley, and I'm joined by Dejan Bojic, Director of Global Product Strategy, Mobile Backhaul at NEC, a company that is not only just technically strong, but also a market share leader in wireless backhaul. NEC has announced in the past 18 months some new perspectives on wireless backhaul that hopefully we'll be hearing more about today. Dejan, could you give us an overview of your company and the products that you're targeting the small cell backhaul market with?
Sure, Ken Lance. So basically, as you mentioned, we have been supplying mobile backhaul solutions now for many, many years, so for several decades from the early days of mobile networks. We hold the leading position in a wireless backhaul. We have supplied solutions. I believe the latest count is 149 countries around the world. So very much, bringing many years of expertise in a wireless backhaul specifically. And really where we have focused in terms of a small cell backhaul is actually to look for several things. One is the technology innovation which is necessary to fulfill kind of technical requirements that our customers are looking for, but also to deliver them with the right economics. And really the way we work with our customers in the area of small cell backhaul is to be a one-stop shop for all their needs in this segment. What does that mean? Well, it is about the right technology toolkit. So that's probably the first thing I should explain, that from the NEC's perspective, we are not providing just a single technologies, but a suite of technologies and products to address the various use case scenario for small cell backhaul. Whether those small cells are in there to address capacity needs in dense urban areas, or perhaps to cover the areas of currently poor coverage in the rural communities, for example. But beyond just the technology and product toolkit, it's also about providing the right set of know-how, technical expertise, and professional services to help with all the things around securing the sites, planning the deployment, executing the deployment in as short time as possible, and then of course helping our customers maintain that with, again, as lowest OpEx as is possible. So that is really our approach. And in terms of technology leadership, we have focused on certain new approaches that perhaps some people would be surprised coming from NEC.
Well, that's really interesting, Dejan. When you say that you've got a toolkit, does that mean that you're in a position to be able to address the entire spectrum of the small cell marketplace, not only the hot spots, the dense urban deployments, but also the not spots, the rural applications that a lot of operators are thinking of using small cells for?
Absolutely, that's exactly the case. And actually, it's interesting to very briefly reflect on the recent history of small cells and how the small cells have developed in terms of adoption by mobile operators. If we look back at it, actually, where the small cells really started taking off is in the home environment, through what was, we used to call femtocells until not so long ago. And actually, NEC again has a leading position in that space. And it's actually over the last couple of years, shall we say, that the community, the industry, has accepted more and more that actually we need to take these small cells outside, but we also need to move from the closed mode to the open mode. And then we, of course, look at where do these small cells, open access small cells, really bring the most value. And yes, we do have two quite polarized application cases. So there is not much in the way of middle ground here. The two key use cases, it's the dense urban areas where we need the capacity. So people often talk about, sort of the areas where people congregate, whether it's sort of sports arenas, train stations, shopping centers, all those kind of places. And on the other hand, we are talking about rural communities where perhaps it was cost prohibitive until so far to deliver macrocellular solutions. So NEC actually provides small cell solutions in both of those use cases, and by implication, we also bring the backhaul solutions for both. Now, of course, the requirements for the backhaul in those two use cases are significantly different, But then again, we are very well aware of that, and we provide the technologies accordingly.
Okay. Recently, Dejan, NEC's been talking about a different approach for wireless backhaul. I mean, NEC's been a leader for years in conventional point-to-point microwave links, you know, operating in the 6 to 42 gigahertz range. But recently, you've been talking about using different frequency bands.
Sure. The great advantage of being a company like NEC with such a heritage in microwave backhaul is that we actually get the early visibility of our customers' requirements. So it was actually as long as 3 years ago that we started a dialogue with some of the key operators, global mobile operators around outdoor small cells. And now, for now, I will focus on the dense urban areas. And we started looking into their requirements and what they need. And very quickly, it became very transparent that if we are to translate this down in sort of its most simplest, most direct form, the requirements are really for comparatively very high capacity to those small cells at an ultra low cost. So what we had to do as NEC is actually to look how can we innovate in technology from technology perspective to deliver that high capacity at that very low cost. So we started looking at different technology options, and very quickly we came to a realization that actually we have to move higher up the frequencies in order to deliver this. And very quickly, on basis of that, we started looking into millimeter wave and specifically into 60 gigahertz. And what we found out through analysis and through evaluation is actually that with 60 gigahertz we can deliver what is effectively a future-proof capacity. So it's for the purposes of small cells and small cell backhaul, it's effectively a limitless capacity. And at the same time, we knew that due to nature of its propagation, nature of the regulation of that spectrum, availability of spectrum in those frequencies, that we can actually deliver these products at a very low cost, a very small footprint, and actually very low cost of ownership related to the cost of spectrum itself. So we started very shortly afterwards, and if you look back on the history of NEC's position on this, is we started promoting use of 60 gigahertz. And we are very happy to see that basically the industry has reached a consensus around this, and that indeed 60 gigahertz is now recognized as one of the primary wireless technology to deliver that street level connectivity to small cells.
What is what's the cost of using 60 gigahertz spectrum, and what's the availability like in different markets around the world?
It's pretty good. One of the reasons why we actually focused on 60 gigahertz is the key technology choice. If we look at the regulations in sort of key leading markets of United States and Europe, actually there's a vast quantities of the spectrum, a vast amounts, I should say, of the spectrum available, up to 9 gigahertz of spectrum available in these frequencies. And actually our recommendation for the use of these spectrum is to be what we call license exempt, which is basically anybody can use it and it's free to use. And when we consider the sort of projections around, sort of quantities of small cell and very high densities of small cells, the fact that operators don't need to pay for the spectrum, and also they don't need to go through the administrational cost of managing the spectrum, it's actually a big benefit. Of course, as any spectrum regulation, then you have the next level of implementation, which is actually a national regulatory level. And in many cases, again, our regulators have already followed through and made the spectrum available free for use. In some other countries, there's still some way to go in actually recognizing the need for it, for the use of 60 gigahertz, and actually making it open for the use. But we are quite confident that basically now, with the momentum behind the small cells and an industry consensus for the need for 60 gigahertz, that this shouldn't be a major concern.
Okay, well, we've heard in this series from other vendors who are using or bringing to market solutions that are operating in similar frequencies. What would you say is the NEC technology advantage of your solution operating at this frequency What are the unique features? What makes it better than the other options that are out there?
Well, there are certain specifics around our feature set that's quite unique. One of those that I should point out is the use of what we call narrowband channels, because majority of products in this space use actually relatively wide channels, anywhere between 250, 500, even in some cases 1000 megahertz, which is fine. But what we do in NEC, we actually use the narrowband transmission at 50 megahertz. And that gives us much more room to maneuver in terms of the link design and propagation characteristic, the capacity and distance we can achieve, and also in terms of equipment design of how can we actually design the actual components within the equipment to actually make them as efficient as and low cost as possible. Another key point is that we have actually designed this product from scratch. The use of 60 gigahertz is not new. It has been used in the past, but primarily for low volume access application in the telecom space. And as you know, they carried a certain legacy behind them in terms of design and cost. What we have done, because we have specifically targeted this, is created a brand new product from scratch with the right economics, right cost points, and right performance levels, making sure that we can reach those several hundreds of megabits per second, and yet, sort of make it relatively cost effective. And what really, what's the strength, traditional strength of NECs, this space, is the transmission at high frequencies. So this is not the first time that NEC is developing 60 gigahertz products. We have had products in the past available, for example, for the backhaul of high definition television, which we have deployed in certain markets in Asia. So we have that expertise. And this has really been powerful to us and to our customers, because in our early trials of our 60 gigahertz product, we have actually rolled out our units, and what was very pleasing to see that our RF capability and RF performance was very, very solid right from the start. Because obviously in any new product life cycle, you'd expect certain teething problems at the beginning before the technology matures. But actually, we are not seeing much of that at all with NEC. The product is already, performance of the product is already mature. We have proven that through early trials with several of our customers. That has given them, in turn, a confidence that 60 gigahertz is now ready to go and be rolled out in volumes.
Okay, that sounds that's fascinating, hearing about how you actually developed a product from scratch, and I guess the way I would summarize it, it sounds as though your radio design approach has been to deliver something that's very flexible and very robust to your customers, but at the end of the day, the radios have to be deployed in some sort of a topology. Can you talk about the different types of topologies that you can support with this radio? And do you have anything else that's contributing to the creation or traffic management in those topologies?
Absolutely, and actually this it's probably the right point to bring us to sort of where we should explain, our toolkit, because we have spent a few minutes talking specifically about 60 gigahertz, and rightly so, because it's a new technology and it's a significant piece of innovation. But it's certainly not the only technology in the toolkit. We do recognize that in some cases the line of sight requirements may be a little bit too challenging. So for that reason, we have added to our toolkit various non-line of sight solutions as well, and those are really trading off at that street level connectivity. So it's really where we see the sort of complementing nature of 60 gigahertz and the non-line of sight is reaching those let's call them lampposts for typical lamppost deployments. However, but that's not the only part of this story, because every time we roll out these tens of and hundreds of small cells, we'll have the knock-on impact on the rest of the backhaul network in terms of capacity, in terms of traffic management, end-to-end. We cannot just treat the small cell backhaul domain in isolation. You can almost see it, this is a just extension of the capillaries of the existing backhaul network. And considering that NEC has heavy presence in the existing backhaul, we are in a good position to address that network level design with this expansion into the small cell domain. And for that reason, in addition to these street-level connectivity solutions, we also have introduced a new E-band radio product, which is basically there to address increased capacity in the aggregation in urban areas. So if you imagine several small cells at the street level being collected with 60 gigahertz RF technologies, at the aggregation point, we'll need to transmit them further into the network. That's really where high-capacity E-band radio comes to the fore. In addition to that, we have also introduced a very interesting modular concept for introducing optical connectivity into our radio units as well, so we can provide a seamless extension from fiber connection, optical connection into the radio last mile. And then we also have some very interesting designs around the nodal functions. So what we have released is this little product called iPassLink GX, which has been available now for almost a year in the market. And that's effectively a miniaturized all-outdoor router device. It acts as a router, but it also acts as a power supply unit for the radios. So actually one small outdoor device can power up to 4 radios. So effectively, that gives you that ability to branch in a very space-constrained environment, whether that's the street, whether that's a rooftop. And again, with a device like that, it's again relatively low-cost way to expand into ring topologies, into meshing, in partial meshing, or just simply to branch out from the existing aggregation point. So that's a sort of, if we look at the network element layer and the links and connectivities and topologies. But then, of course, this all needs to gel together, and we need to have the ability to manage the traffic, to optimize the traffic, to optimize the capacity as it passes through this backhaul infrastructure. And then with that comes very close into play a whole issue of quality of service management across the whole piece in an end-to-end fashion. And what we have spent quite a lot of work developing in NEC is the network management solution that envelops all of these technologies together. And we feel this is quite important because what we are aiming to do is to give a common framework to our customers in terms of operation and maintenance of the network. In addition to that network management platform, we have also introduced a sets of tools for basically either static or dynamic optimization of capacity resources in backhaul. Sometimes we refer to these as backhaul resource manager applications. And this is something quite new, and we are now in a concept evaluation with several of our customers to basically roll this out in their backhaul end-to-end. So that really sort of what we build it up from that final few hundred yards, that physical connectivity at a few hundred meters and yards to the small cells. We make sure that a knock-on impact on the existing backhaul is accommodated for, and then of course we give that end-to-end common management framework for the complete backhaul. And in a sense, that is what we feel then gives us a good place to go to our customers and say, look, we are your one-stop shop for all your backhaul needs, and that's how we work with our customers.
Well, Dejan, it sounds like a very, very full toolkit or toolbox. Not only does it have lots of components, but lots of tools to help them figure out how to use it as well, and design networks. I'd like to move the conversation to talk about costs and for a moment, because clearly, the big issue with small cells is the fact that one day operators expect to have lots of them, not only just deployed indoors, but as you pointed out at the beginning, deployed outdoors. And when we move to a world where we're deploying literally thousands of additional cell site or access points in the context of the network, there's an associated cost, with that, and clearly one of the focal points of small cell deployment is how much is it going to cost to connect each one of the small cells up to the rest of the network. What can you tell us about the installation parameters and the cost parameters around your product? Maybe if we start with installation first, and then maybe talk about what you estimate it's going to cost to actually build a small cell backhaul network with your products.
Well, it's absolutely the question around the whole small cell rollout. I mean, that's really what what will determine the future success of small cells and small cell networks. It is the economics of it. I think there's little doubt that we need to do small cells in terms of overall network performance. But yes, it's still, and I still this still feels like this question is very much up in the air, and our customers are certainly still grappling with all the minutiae of the TCO models and how will this all work out. And that's why I think it's hard to answer your question in a very specific way. What we know for a fact is the cost of equipment itself has to be minimized, and we have done so, but that's only a fraction. And if we compared it to the past deployments of mobile backhaul for the macrocellular environment, the cost of equipment itself is actually becoming less and less significant. It's all about site acquisition, site planning, engineering, installation, commissioning services. So one question you asked is it's about installation. Well, certainly we are aiming to, in terms of installation times for any of products in our toolkit, to minimize that to probably an hour or a couple of hours per site. But there is a great dependency in that. There's a dependency on what technology we use, what environment we are working in. If we are working at an aggregation site where perhaps we have an easier access to get with our customers, that makes things simpler. If we are working in a busy streets, then of course that presents its own challenges. And typically what we're looking to do there is actually to do area-wide deployments in a single shot. So rather than doing site-by-site rollouts, what we are definitely working with our customers there is basically to do, for example, a square mile at a time, shall we say, and basically optimize both people resources as well as engineering resources to do that. So it's incredibly hard to pin down the numbers, and certainly that is the focus now where we are with our customers, because we are now in that cycle where they are trialing out all of these technologies in the field and basically learning through experience of actually how the economics of the installation and commissioning work. And we are there with them to learn from that and try to tweak certain aspects of our equipment design in order to help them. And just to close up, to give you an example what those tweaks may be, it's all about automation of provisioning of the equipment. So for example, have we put in the right steps in terms of our software design to make sure that if we do mount the radios up, for example, that configuration, download of the configuration and the self-provisioning equipment actually works, and it's robust and simple and fast enough to field. We think it is, but to be frank with you, it's actually it's only going to be proven for the real life deployments, and we are still in the trial stages of that.
Okay, that's interesting, Dejan. I mean, I think if obviously with a company like NEC with such a broad portfolio, it's really difficult to zero in. But if we were to look at specifically your 60 gigahertz product, that is clearly the one that's going to be focused on the street furniture type deployments. I mean, what kind of estimates have you come up with that as far as installation times and parameters are concerned?
Well, it's in the order of hours, I should say. Depends, I'm aware I'm kind of not, again, I'm struggling to give you a specific answer because it depends on the local installation and site procedures. If the site is planned correctly and all the power cabling is in place and all the connectors are in place and we don't have any hiccups, we can certainly come in there, mount the equipment, line up the link, and get the equipment commissioned and working within an hour, 2 hours at most. But again, the real life, especially in the street environment, is difficult. So sometimes we have to, work on a fly and sort of make sure that any hiccups in terms of, for example, you might come to site and realize that the power is not provisioned correctly, and that will add time. So the real trick we see here is actually that collaborative engagement with our customers. So not just with our customers' engineers, but perhaps third-party companies or local installation companies, where we put a lot of focus on is actually pre-planning, pre-training, and making sure that when we go into the field, that everything works smoothly. So that's we're trying as much as to focus on sort of that pragmatic approach to real life challenges of rolling this out.
Well, thank you for that, Dejan. I mean, at the end of the day, NEC's got tremendous experience at deploying these types of networks, these types of equipment. So I guess we have to listen to your pragmatism and think about that clearly as we're making decisions, or the industry is making decisions about which way to go. So with that, I'd like to thank you again and say that your comments and observations are going to be a great contribution, without a doubt, to this Senza Fili report on small cell backhaul. Just to remind everyone, this report is aiming to provide an overview of all the different small cell backhaul solutions available, and it's going to include an in-depth interview just like this one from all the leading vendors who have participated in the report. The report is available to be downloaded from the Senza Fili website, senzafiliconsulting.com. So with that, I'd like to thank Dejan again and wish you all a good day.
Thank you, Lance.